In Terraria, to progress the game, you need to loot, gear up, and fight bosses. And there are a lot of bosses. How many bosses are there? 18 to be exact, if you don't count whatever this monstrosity is. But today, I'm going to be ranking every boss from the worst of the worst to the best of the best. Just saying that this is purely factual and there are no opinions in this video whatsoever. That's a joke, so please don't come for me. Anyways, let's begin. Now, let's start off with the bad bosses. The bosses I despise. The bosses that make me seethe. Number 18, Golem. There is just nothing good about Golem. Everything about Golem is bad. The place it's fought in sucks, since the temple is one of the most annoying areas in the game. The boss fight is just bad. It's easy. Extremely easy. Just put a platform at the top of the room, move from side to side, and this guy just can't do anything about it. You know how many balance changes this boss gets in every update? Like, I swear, they just can't seem to fix this boss. I've died to the temple more times than Golem. Like, imagine being weaker than your own minions. Even if it's easy, it's also not fun at all to fight. Whenever I get to the post-planetary stage of the game, I notice that the next boss is Golem and I'm like, ugh, Golem. It makes me depressed. You know what's the saddest part? At one point, Golem was straight up the final boss of the game. It's in Terraria 1.2 that Golem released, and imagine working your way through the entire game just to face Golem. Golem. Thank God they added the Moonlord. I mean, one good thing about Golem is its loot. The Pixaw is a really fast pickaxe, and beetle husks are useful for melee players, since they can craft beetle armor. But that's really it. Overall, for me, the title to the worst boss in Terraria goes to Golem. Number 17, Deerclops. The reason I put Deerclops solo is that it's just forgettable. I have around 2,500 hours on Terraria, and you know how many times I fought Deerclops in an actual playthrough? 3 times. 2,500 hours. 3 times. Even if you manage to somehow remember this boss, the loot isn't really that good. Lucy the Axe is a good axe, but it's something you can live without. And I never find myself using Chester since usually I have the money trough at this stage of the game. You know what I hate the most about Deerclops though? The fight. The fight is so bad. Here, take a look at this. Yeah, I'm bored too. If you just stay on the ground, she literally repeats only one attack for the entire fight. Even if you do somehow die, guess what? Deerclops is the only boss in the game that doesn't despawn when you die. So like, this boss is just straight up a cakewalk since even if you die, you can come back and beat the boss. The only thing I like about Deerclops is the theme. The theme is a banger. I know it's just a Don't Starve remix, but still, I love it. Also, just one more fun fact about this boss. Do you know that Deerclops is a girl? Yeah, me neither. My mind was blown when I found this out. But overall, this boss is just not fun to fight. I never fight this boss since there's literally no reason for me to fight it unless I'm just trying to beat every boss in the game. So on to the next boss. Number 16, Queen Slime. Queen Slime is bad. Now here's the thing. Let's start with the good things. Queen Slime is pretty easy to summon, the fights look cool, and she has a pretty nice theme. Her loot is also really useful. The mount is very good, and Crystal Assassin armor is absolutely goated. The Hook of Dissonance is also amazing. Most importantly, the Blade Staff is just an absolutely goated summoner weapon. So why do I hate her? The fight. The fight is the only reason she's here. Queen Slime's fight makes me want to take my own eyes out. Because the amount of absolute projectile spam in this fight is insane. Most of the time, I don't even know what's happening on my screen. The King Slime spawning slimes was already pretty annoying, but spawning slimes that shoot their own projectiles? Whoever thought of this fight was either high or is just an absolute masochist. Actually, probably both. I don't know what to say. Overall, Queen Slime is a good boss, just please fix the fight and it'd be way higher on this list. Anyways, on to the next boss. Number 15, Skeletron Prime. When it comes to why Skeletron Prime is this low, I just don't enjoy this boss. That's really the only reason. I loathe the bombs that Prime spawns. And they get even worse in Legendary mode, because guess what? In Legendary mode, they can destroy blocks. Yeah, great, say goodbye to your arena. But the bombs aren't the only annoying thing. Getting hit by Prime's head spin is absolutely the worst thing that can happen to you in this fight. It deals the damage of a hydrogen bomb, and if you get hit by it once, you get juggled and can't get out of the attack. So you're pretty much done for. Overall, Skeletron Prime is just the most unfun mechanical boss to fight. Normal Skeletron is better in every single way possible, and Prime is just a ripoff. Fight me on that. Anyways, next boss. Number 14, the Destroyer. Ranking it this low might just be because of my natural hatred to worm bosses, I don't know. Now the Destroyer is a pretty fun fight, don't get me wrong. It's just that, again, it's a worm boss, which makes it automatically cheesable. Like, really cheesable. You can destroy it within 15 seconds if you use something like the Superstar Shooter. I just really wish they maybe found a way to make this harder. Like maybe make it so that you can only pierce the Destroyer like a limited amount of times. I don't know. There are probably people in Relogic that have way better ideas than me. But yeah, moving on. Now we're moving on to the more decent bosses. These bosses aren't the best, but they're pretty good. Number 13, the King Slime. The King Slime is honestly a chill boss. It can be pretty pathetic when it comes to its difficulty, but it's one of the first bosses of the game, maybe even the first boss, and it does pretty well at introducing the player to how bosses work. It's also very iconic, which gives it an automatic plus. The King Slime's loot is pretty solid as well. Ninja armor is okay, although I prefer platinum armor. The slime hook is decent, and I love the slimy saddle. The slimy saddle is probably the best item you can get from the boss. My favorite thing about the saddle is the fact that it makes you fall way faster. It becomes so useful for falling in your elevator. Nah, but seriously, it's also really good for bosses like the Eater of Worlds, since you can just bounce on the worm and the projectiles. Also, this guy is my favorite pet in the game. Nothing comes close. Now, with all of the good things being said, I just have a nitpick. Who is that ninja inside the slime? Where the hell did he come from? In the lore, apparently this guy is the guide's brother, which blew my mind. You know, it'd be much cooler if the ninja became a town NPC after the King Slime was defeated. Wasted potential. Another nitpick, which is probably just me, but I never looked at the King Slime the same way again after beating the Queen Slime for the first time. The PTSD really kicks in. But yeah, King Slime, pretty good boss. Number 12, the Eater of Worlds. This boss would probably be way higher if I played Corruption more than Crimson. But anyways, this boss is nice. The Eater is usually considered one of the easier bosses, and it's easier than its Crimson counterpart, which is obviously the Brain of Cthulhu. There really isn't something I hate about the Eater of Worlds, but nothing is really outstanding either. Everything is mainly just good. The fight is pretty fun, and even though the Worm Scarf is worse than the Brain of Confusion, and you can fight me on that, it's still amazing. 17% damage reduction is really useful. Also, the fact that the Eater of Worlds is getting its own soundtrack in the next update only makes it better. You know what's my favorite thing about the Eater though? Seeing its segments slowly get shredded one by one when I use Jester arrows. It just feels so goddamn satisfying. I don't know how to describe the feeling. Now, remember when I said that there wasn't something I hated about the Eater? Well, that was a complete lie, because there's one thing I hate. I hate the fact that it's a worm boss. That's it. My hatred for worms is kicking in, sorry. Anyways, let's move on. Number 11, the Lunatic Cultist. The Lunatic Cultist is a solid boss. First off, which is my absolute favorite thing about the Cultist, is the fact that he's the only boss that isn't some giant monstrosity that you'd see in a creepypasta. You have giant flesh walls, you have ancient celestial gods, you have a living skull, and then you just have this little guy. His eyes look cute, by the way. The fight itself is fun, and I like the illusions. Now for my gripes. The damage this boss deals is kind of pathetic. Unless you're a summoner player that has the defense of a puppy, or if it's master mode, this guy isn't doing any damage to you. You can literally stand still for the entire fight and tank the boss if you're a melee player. Also, I wish the cultist had a treasure bag. Having him have some kind of loot would honestly be pretty cool, maybe a weapon of some sort, but the cultist serves as a good boss to fight right before the final boss of the game. Overall, a good one. Now, we're moving on to the solid bosses, the amazing bosses. You know, the bosses that make you have fun. Number 10, the Queen Bee. The Queen Bee is a damn good one. Finding my first hive on my first playthrough was one of the most terrifying but best experiences of my life. I just see this larva, break it, and get jump scared by the most horrifying bee I've seen in my life. The fight is a really fun one. It's fast paced, as you have to dodge all of the dash attacks and make sure you don't get hit by the stingers. And plus, you shouldn't try to recall from this boss, because she will follow you to the ends of the earth until you die. The Queen Bee's loot is also really good. The Beekeeper sucks, don't use it. But the Bee's Knees is one of my favorite bows in the game. Make sure to use it with the Hive Pack to give it steroids. Also, from beating this boss, you get access to bee armor, which is useful for the people that are a little higher on the spectrum than most other people, also known as summoner players. There's just one thing I don't like about the Queen Bee. Sometimes, it can be so painful to summon it. The reason is, there are times in my playthroughs where it takes me about 3 business years just to find a single hive to fight the Queen Bee in. Other than that, I really like the Queen Bee as a boss. Let's move on. Number 9, the Twins. The Twins are definitely my favorite mechanical boss. I mean, it's more so because the other two kinda just suck. The Twins are like the only boss in the game where you have to fight 2 entities at once. Medusa does not count. I just like how fast paced this boss is, trying to dodge all the dashes that come at you, the lasers, and the cursed flame. The only thing I kinda hate about this boss is Retnazer's lasers. They get insanely fast towards the end that it becomes really hard to dodge. maybe even somewhat unfair. It's why I always kill right user first so spasmatism can be an absolute cakewalk. But that's like the only gripe I have. Also, the fact that this boss is getting a new theme in the next update makes this all the more better, and the theme is a banger. Overall, for me, the title of the best mechanical boss rightfully goes to the twins. Number 8, the Wall of Flesh. I remember when I killed my first voodoo demon on my first playthrough, the voodoo doll fell into the lava and I got jump scared by this beast. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. The Wall of Flesh is an amazing fight. It's one of the more unique bosses, where you have to just run to one side and hope you don't die. The main thing I like about this boss is the fight is just so fun. I usually have a great time fighting this boss, and usually when I die, I don't get enraged since 99% of the time it's your fault when you die. This boss's loot is also amazing. The emblems are one of the best accessories to have. The Demon Heart is literally the best expert mode drop in the game. The Firecracker is one of the best summoner whips to have. So it feels worth it when you do kill the boss. And it really does prepare you for the agonizing pain that is early hard mode. Now, not everything is perfect. There are some minor gripes I have. I absolutely hate building the Wall of Flesh arena. I know you can use water walking potions, but usually it's way better to build an actual platform for you to stand on, and it just sucks. The amount of enemies that spawn when I try to build the arena straight up makes me want to die. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely love using quality of life mods so I can straight up make an instant bridge in the underworld instead of having to actually build it. Quality of life mods on top. Also, every time you die to the wall, you have to wait till a guide respawns, which can take a pretty long time. But those two things are like the only issues I have. Overall, the wall serves its purpose perfectly for being the final pre-hard mode boss. Number 7, the Brain of Cthulhu. I only put it this high on the list because I always choose Crimson. The Brain of Cthulhu is a very solid boss. There really isn't much to say about it. I just find everything about it cool. The idea of having a floating brain with eyeballs the size of the player chasing you may sound weird, but it's executed well. I also really like how the illusions work in the fights. You know what's my favorite thing though? The Brain of Confusion. This is one of my favorite expert mode accessories in the entire game, maybe even my favorite. Well, nah, not really, it's more like my second favorite. I'll get into the first one later. But anyways, this is better than the Worm Scarf and I'll argue with you on it. The only thing I don't like about this boss is when you're in expert mode, you can get so many debuffs which annoy me so much. You can get your defense cut in half. You can get confused, which will mess up your flow of the fight, causing you to take more damage and get more debuffs. You can get cursed to literally not use your weapon. It can get insanely annoying. But that's really the only flaw, and besides, if you just don't get hit, you won't be seeing these debuffs, so really it's not too big of an issue. Overall, the Brain of Cthulhu, really good boss. Number 6, Skeletron. Whoa, I'm on this list. Haha, look at my channel, you should totally subscribe. When it comes to Skeletron, most of my love for this boss comes from nostalgia. On my first ever expert mode playthrough, not classic, expert, Skeletron was the first difficult boss I came across. Bosses like the King Simon and Eye of Cthulhu were difficult, but not too bad, but Skeletron took me quite a few attempts. When I did beat it, the amount of satisfaction I got was insane. Skeletron is just a really good boss. The fight is really fun, and it's one of the most beneficial bosses in the game. Skeletron's loot does suck, but giving you access to the dungeon is what makes it beneficial, since the dungeon is like one of the most mandatory areas to go to if you want to beat the game. I mean, you don't need the dungeon to beat the game, but it's way harder without it. You know what's the best part though? Chippy's couch. Yeah! Not only can you get the Chippy's couch, but Chippy himself literally moves into your house. Amazing. In general, Skeletron is awesome, Skeletron is cool, Skeletron is life, you should subscribe to Skeletron. Now, we're in the top 5. These 5 bosses are my absolute favorites, and they are what made me love the bosses of this game. Let's get into it. Number 5, Moonlord. Now some of you guys might think that I'm crazy for not putting this higher, since it's literally the final boss of Terraria, but I have my reasons. With that being said, Moonlord is perfect as the final boss of Terraria. The feeling you get from first fighting the Moonlord is that you're up against a god. You're up against the pinnacle. And that quite literally is true, which makes it so perfect as the final boss. Unlike the times in 1.2 when Golem was the final boss. And with that feeling of being up against the god, once you do beat it, that's when you feel like a god. Moonlord might just be the hardest boss in the game. The lasers, the death ray that can deal like more than half of your health, and more. So once you do beat it, the satisfaction you have is just incomparable to anything else, which is why I just love the boss. Now there's just one thing I hate. Let's say you don't beat it on your first try, and you have to retry it. Well, if you don't have enough pillar fragments to craft the Celestial Sigil, good luck because you have to do the pillars again. The pillars might just be my least favorite part of the game, so having to do them again just so you have a few more chances at beating the Moonlord is just so annoying. Even though the enemies you have to kill get cut in half, once you beat the pillars for the first time, it can still get really tedious. But other than that, Moonlord is perfect as the final boss of Terraria, but for me, it doesn't quite hold up to the next 4 bosses. Number 4, Duke Fishron. Finding your first truffle worm is an experience for everyone. You see it has 666% bait power, you use it, and you get jump scared. This guy was a secret April Fool's boss when it first came out, but it quickly became one of my absolute favorite bosses. The fight is incredibly fun and high speed, having to dodge all of the quick dashes that he does and the Sharknadoes that spawn. I also love the loot. Every weapon from this boss is good. The Bubble Gun and Razor Blade Typhoon are both solid mage weapons. The Tempest Staff is an amazing summon weapon. The Flare-On is one of my favorite melee weapons, and do not get me started on how much I like the Tsunami. Also, I love the Fish-on wings. They're my favorite wings in the entire game. Also, the Shrimpy Truffle is the best mount in the entire game. This mount can turn Moonlord into a cakewalk of a fight. Now, here's the thing. This boss is meant to be fought after Golem. However, truffle worms start spawning after beating the wall of flesh, so technically you can fight it at any point in hard mode. Beating this boss before the mech bosses is a very difficult challenge, but if you do, you get access to all of the loot I mentioned earlier in early hard mode. This boss's weapons are viable against the Moonlord, and you get to use them before the mechs. I honestly don't think this is unbalanced, because you probably deserve being overpowered after being Fish-on before the mechs. Overall, Fish-on is an amazing fight, it has amazing loot, and yeah, good boss. Number 3, Plantera. Plantera is just an all-around really good boss. First off, having a living plant chase you around as a boss is so scary but at the same time so cool. Also, the fight is fun, making you have to dash and fend off from her creeping slowly towards you. I'd personally give this a number 7 or 6, if it wasn't for one thing. There's just one thing that makes this boss way higher up on the list. The music. The Plantera boss fight is home to objectively the best theme in Terraria. I don't care what anyone says. Plantera's theme is the best music in Terraria. No arguments. Fight me if you will. I don't think people expected a boss like this to have rock as its music, but at the same time, it's perfect. Perfect, down to the last detail. Now, let's stop talking about the theme and instead let me talk about this one issue I have with Plantera. Finding the Plantera bulb is agonizing. The way you summon this thing, I absolutely hate it. I deleted my first Expert Mode world out of pure rage because I couldn't find this bulb after hours upon hours of searching. Nowadays, it's easier to find a bulb since in 1.4.4, one always spawns once you defeat the mechs, but it can still get really annoying to find. But that's the only issue I have, and it's probably just a luck thing. Overall, Plantera is my goat, Plantera is love, Plantera is life, I love Plantera. Thank you Relogic for the amazing music. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2, and this might come as a surprise to some of you, the Eye of Cthulhu. The Eye of Cthulhu is a really basic boss, and it might even be called one of the easiest bosses in the game. So why is it so high up? Most of the reason is just because of how iconic this boss is. This guy is the face of Terraria. In fact, I guarantee you that there are many people out there that have never played Terraria at all, and yet they still know about the Eye of Cthulhu. Now yeah, it is iconic, but it also needs to be a good boss to back up the spot. And it is! You know the feeling I got on my first playthrough when I saw the message of an evil presence watching me? Then I got jump scared by the Eye of Cthulhu? That feeling of pure horror could not be replicated by any other game I've played. And the fight itself is not the hardest, yeah, but it's not supposed to be hard. Although some people fight the King Slime as their first boss, I think usually new players would find the Eye as their first. I don't know, maybe I'm just stupid. But anyways, the Eye isn't supposed to be hard because since it's the first boss new players fight, it's supposed to be somewhat of an introduction. It's the stepping stone for later bosses to come. And even though it wasn't too hard, I had a lot of fun with this boss on my first playthrough. And it gets even better in expert mode, because the dashes are faster and you need to utilize your mobility carefully, and when you do get hit, it feels like it's your fault. Don't even get me started on the loot. The Shield of Cthulhu is my absolute favorite expert mode accessory in the entire game. The dash just helps me so much with movement. For me, it's just mandatory and I can't play without it. That's why nowadays, I absolutely hate classic mode with a passion. Overall, the Eye of Cthulhu is just an amazing, fun, and iconic boss. But there's just one boss, in my opinion, that tops this one. So now, it's time for first place. The Empress of Light. For me, the Empress of Light is just perfect in every way. Literally everything about this boss is top notch. First off, the fight looks instantly cool. This is probably the best looking fight in the game. It's a light show. When the boss first released, many people, including me, felt like it was a mod. That's how cool it was. I lied, by the way. I started playing this game after 1.4. Second, amazing loot. Everything from this boss is useful. It has an amazing weapon for each class. The Starlight can shred anything. The Eventide is on par with the Tsunami for being the best bow before the pillars. The Kaleidoscope is the best whip in the game. I don't know anything about the Nightglow because I don't play mage, but it looks good too. The expert mode accessory, the Soaring Insignia, is straight up broken. Infinite Flight is just so useful, especially for the Moonlord. And of course we have the Terra Prisma. the strongest summoner weapon in the entire game. To get the Terra Prisma though, you need to fight her in daytime. And honestly, daytime Empress isn't as bad as people think. This fight is a type of fight that gets way easier after your first few wins, and most of the attacks are telegraphed pretty well, so no hitting it doesn't become too much of an issue, while also providing a really good challenge for a well worth it weapon. Also, there's the Stellar Tune, which is a 5% chance. Have I ever used this weapon? No. Again, I don't play mage. Maybe it's good, maybe it's trash, I don't know. But to top off the amazing fight and loot off, the Empress of Light theme is just a banger. Overall, the Empress of Light is a lot of people's favorite boss, including me, and it makes sense. It just feels like Relogic really put on their A game with this fight. In general, Terraria has a lot of highs and lows when it comes to bosses. Mostly highs. But every boss is different, and even the bad bosses have at least one good aspect. Even if Deerclops is literally the most pathetic thing I've seen in my life, at least its theme is a banger and Lucy the Axe exists. Even if Queen Slime is one of the worst experiences I've had in my life, at least it feels somewhat worth it when you kill the boss because it has good loot. So what can we learn from this video? The fact that there isn't really a boss that's bad in every single way possible. So that's it for this video. This video is very different from my usual ones. I always do playthroughs, but I thought it'd be fun to try a ranking for a change. Hopefully you guys liked this video, and comment down below what you'd change about this ranking. Thanks for watching, and see ya.